Welcome to the Last Drop Business Podcast, where we have the privilege of interviewing successful business owners who have maintained their sobriety. These entrepreneurs have achieved great success while staying sober, inspiring all of us to overcome challenges and to achieve our goals. So whether you're someone who is in recovery, an entrepreneur, or just someone looking for stories of hope, The Last Drop is your source of inspiration, motivation, and empowerment in the business place. I'm your host, Timo, and please join us as we celebrate The Last Drop, the moment where everything changes and the real journey begins. Welcome to the Last Drop Business Podcast, where we celebrate incredible journeys of individuals who've embraced a sober lifestyle and found strength, resilience, and purpose in the process. I am your host, Tim O'Connor, and on today's episode, we have Danielle DiGrandi, the sober rebel who's empowering rebel women to defy the status quo by staying sober and self-aware. Danielle, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's good to be on.
Yeah, definitely. Did you do anything fun this week? Did you have any sort of fun plans or any fun plans coming up?
Yeah, so I live on the coast of Texas. I live in a beach town. It's called Rockport. It's kind of by Port Aransas. But I'm from Austin. So I go back and forth between Austin to Rockport often to get the best of both worlds. So I got to spend some time with my family and yeah, just really, I always, like, whenever I go home and I spend time with my family, I'm always just so grateful for the life and sobriety that I've created for myself, and just the clarity. It's kind of like my living amends to be around my parents and present. And so it feels really good to be able to do that.
That's awesome. So, what's the distance between Rockport and Austin? Is like a couple hours?
Yeah, it's like 3.5 hours.
Oh, that's not bad. That's definitely not bad. That's good. It's like, it's so nice being able to like make those amends to your family. And, you know, I try and do the same thing, you know, around the holidays. You know, I traveled all over the state of Colorado and like down to New Mexico, and was like, you know, it's nice to be able to do that now and to like be able to like want to do it. And it was like, yeah, I want to go see my family and I want to go be with them and be present. And like, you know, it's good being sober, being able to do that. So right on.
The holidays hit hard.
Oh yeah.
when you're sober, at least I'm just grateful to be the person that can show up. You know, be reliable, dependable, accountable, all those
Not
things.
Be the person that's like throwing a glass across the room and like
that may or may not
running out of the house. I know, right? I feel you. It's same here.
But like, yeah, that actually did. It's a true story.
Like all of the worst things that like the times I got arrested and the times that I caused the most stuff with my parents were always around the holiday season. And it's just like sometimes still it's like the holidays sometimes are still a little like painful because like it's just there's something about the holidays where I'm like, oh my God, I really don't want to do this and I really don't like this time of year, but I want to see my family and I want to be around my family. And it's just there's just something that's still kind of difficult about the holidays, you know?
Yeah, I really know.
Sure. Well, yeah, let's get into this. So just have a couple of questions for you. We'll kind of just dive right in. So the first one is, why did you start the Sober Rebels?
So my background in work prior to, so like my whole life, and I'm sure this is maybe a common story for a lot of people in sobriety, like everything changed when I got sober. It seemed like my entire life I had subscribed to a narrative of what I thought I should do, like what seemed like the appropriate path to take, like as a child to go to college, then to be an adult, like all the things. So I subscribed to that narrative, and not all of it was bad. Like I learned a lot of stuff in the beginning, like my corporate career. I was in finance. I did mortgage banking. It was like very Wolf of Wall Street sales type environment. So I learned a lot from that. It's not all bad. But once I got sober, I feel like everything that I had done up until that point in my life, like didn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah.
And
I feel that, yes.
I say like how I describe like my journey is I feel like I was living my whole life in black and white, right? And then like I got sober and then it was finally in color. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I actually have a say in what I want to do from here on out. And I think that's one of the most empowering things is like the clarity you get.
Yes.
and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but the clarity you get, and then you're like, all right, well, if I can do this, I can do anything. And I
Yeah.
really like, even though back then, I'm definitely like a stronger version of myself now, but I was so um, open to
Mm.
new things and just so like eager to rebuild my life that everything changed. So I totally changed the trajectory of my career. And in doing so, you know, one of the pieces of myself that I love the most is the rebellious side of me. And I
Totally.
think that, like, you think rebel and you're like rule breaker, defiant, this. I'm like, well, that was me, right? That was me. That's all me. But can I funnel that like crazy energy that I used to use when I got arrested or when I was, you know, doing really bad things? Can I funnel it into like, you know, kind of a more empowering way of being
Mm.
and
Mhm.
sobriety? And can I take my power back and stand up against some of the things that maybe I subscribe to, uh, alcohol included, right? Like big out.
Yeah.
Can I look at all those things and can I like raise my middle finger to that and start a movement in that regard? So to me, the sober rebel is it's an embodiment of just like still looking at things through the lens of like, is that my idea? Where did that come from? You know,
Mm.
and
Yeah, yeah.
like living life like that. So I was
That's
like, who do
cool.
I want to talk to? And I was like, I want to talk to me. And I know that I'm not the only one in that. So that was the birth of the movement. There's a lot of kind of like sub genres of the sober rebel, but it's an overarching like empowerment movement and sobriety.
That's cool. That's cool. So, like, what do you do with the sober rebel? Do you so is it mainly you just reach out to women? Because I think this is why I wanted to have you on, because
Yeah.
it's amazing seeing so many women get sober and so many women on Instagram and social media that are now starting to be about sobriety. And you know, even when I first started getting into recovery, I remember hearing women share about how, like, back in the like the 60s and 70s and even like maybe the 80s, they were saying like it was hard for women to get sober because it was
Yeah.
like it was that stigma of like, well, women are just X, Y, and Z, whatever. And I'm pretty much a feminist myself because
Oh,
it's like, and
yes.
it's just hearing that was like so heartbreaking. It was like, so women can't get, like, they have to stay in the house and work and do all this
Yeah.
shit. Like, why can't they have the
Yeah.
same opportunity as men, you know? And so seeing all of these women get sober on social media and really empower other women, it's just so amazing to see, because I feel like with any form of sobriety, like, everyone needs as much help as they can get. And it's like when there's still a stigma around women in society today that's
Still.
terrible. And it's like, you know, it's great to see women rising up and being like, you can do this, you can get sober, you can like do anything with your life that's just as good as men, you know? And like, to me, it's just beautiful to see, because it's like, you know, women deserve the same shit we do, you know? And it's
Yeah.
just, it's great to see all these women just kicking ass and making moves. So, like, is it just for women or is it for everybody? Or what is the Sober Rebels all about?
You know, that's interesting. First of all, I love about what you said. I agree with everything you said, right? And that's still part of like, there is this part of the, you know, how I feel as a woman that is very like the rebellious, like F you, fuck you to anyone that wants me to play small, I'm going to go bigger kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what I love about social media, and I'll kind of go backtrack off of this, is it gives people an equal playing ground, right? Like it gives
Hmm.
you an equal to like share
Yes.
your story unapologetically, unequivocally, just like, this is what I believe in, take it or leave it. And it really is cool. I actually, when I got sober, I wasn't even on Instagram for the first year. So sober Instagram was not part of my recovery journey ever.
Nice. Okay.
But in a year into it, I was like, I was doing sobriety coaching and things like that on the side. And I
Mm.
was like, this is an amazing opportunity. So for me, the work that I do is in mental wellness. So I'm a mental wellness coach. And so working with women and men, you know, I saw like Sober Rebels is my passion project. It's not
Mm.
my
Yeah.
work, but I started off as only women. And
Cool.
surprisingly, more and more men, because what happened is maybe you can relate to this. I had been off the grid in my
Mhm.
addiction, off the grid,
Oh
off
yeah.
social media. Nobody knew I was. And then here I am coming back on thing like, hi, this is me. And these are all the things that are happening. And
Yeah.
so I didn't
Yes.
have any like relationship equity really with people. Right. Like, and that was
Mm.
kind of one of the greatest things is I was kind of like, well, fuck it. I don't really care what anyone from high school thinks or anyone from college thinks. Like,
Yeah.
this is it. Like, this is really important stuff that I have to share. So I kind of just like, I flipped the camera on one day and I was like, fuck it. Like, let's go.
Hell
And
yeah.
all of these people, my bosses, like people from high school, people from college, like slowly over time start coming in my DMs, like, hey, I have a problem too. Like, what
Oh,
you're doing
that's
is so
awesome.
inspiring. And I was like, I think that this is bigger than just like men or women.
Oh yeah.
And so for me, it's like I've opened it up to everyone because I'm like, I love the
Nice.
masculine feminine balance. I love your
Hmm.
input and I love a woman's input. So yeah,
Totally.
I see the bigger picture is all of us
Yeah.
encompassed.
Yeah. No, that's great, and that was good. And I definitely can relate to that because when I started getting in with the last drop, and when I started bringing this to life, that was my thought. Also, was like, all of these people that have seen me on social media, like at one point saw me when I was like deep in my addiction. So, at that point they'd like seen me at that point at whatever I posted was like my lowest low in their eyes, and they maybe even didn't know it, but now they're like, oh, maybe like there was something up or whatever. And so now, like with the last drop, it is so empowering and like so freeing just to be able to like post something that is making a difference, rather than like, oh, here's a video of me like trashed on a Sunday night or whatever and like trying to do whatever. And it's just beautiful how social media like is such a good like channel and outlet to show people that there's a different way of life than like what's going on. Because I agree, like it's way more than just like men and women, like addiction and alcoholism runs across everything. It doesn't matter like your age, your sex, your race, your status, like whether you're a millionaire or whether you're dirt poor, like you could still be an addict. And so yeah, no, that's great. And kind of like jumping into the next question, like, so do you feel like in the past, like drugs or alcohol, did you use drugs or alcohol to like help with like who you were? Like, do you feel like it helped you grow to be who you were in finance, or did it help you be a better person in your friend group? Like, do you feel like that like hurt or helped you as you were growing up?
I love that you asked this question because I actually had to think about it. I 100% think that drugs and alcohol hindered my creativity and like I think
Yeah.
it was creativity and one other thing that you mentioned.
Your career, your
My career.
creativity in
Yeah.
your career. Yeah.
So I started using and drinking pretty young, around the age of like 14, and never stopped until my mid 30s. And what I know now, looking back on that, and I was like always a very creative person growing up when I was a child.
Yeah.
And I definitely know that that hindered that. And I think what, from my experience, what if I could encapsulate what drugs and alcohol do to me is they literally dull me, like numb me to the point where nothing like I you can't even see your true potential when you're so clouded like that. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's like I went to college because you were supposed to go to college. I
Right.
graduated.
Yeah. Right.
I wasn't even ready. Like I wish I would going looking back. I'm like, oh, I should have took some time to figure out what I was passionate about. But I just went to the next thing. And then when I graduated
Yes.
college, I fell into the career of mortgage banking. Like it wasn't like, oh, that's what I
Mm,
want to do with my life. But I fell into it. And then I was 21 years old, 22. It was like I was making tons of money. I was
mm,
partying. I was just like, I was like, oh, this is it. Like I made it. I made it. So and then I kept, doing that career and I was like, why do I feel so empty still? Why, like, even though I have the things, like,
yes.
I can't drink the Kool-Aid. Like, everyone's like, okay. And I'm just like sitting in my car. Like, I really, like, the last thing I want to do is go to work. And so for me, it
Mm,
was just the notion of like, is this what people do for the rest of their life? And then they die? Like, how, like, what the
totally.
fuck?
Yes. For
And it's like I
real.
felt like I was literally so there was no like heart in it. There was no passion in the things that I was doing, but I was still doing it because I was supposed to do it. And I think the drugs and alcohol just like made it more bearable for me.
Yeah. Yeah,
That makes sense.
totally. That's yeah, and I feel the same way, I feel like I was just kind of like a shell of a person in college, and I was like a chameleon, and
Yes.
drugs and alcohol helped me, like, oh, I could go hang out with these people and these people, and I thought I had an idea of who I was. And I think, deep down I kind of knew, but at the same time it was like, it's only in just now, like in year 3 of sobriety, of no substances or anything, it to where I'm now really like, this is who I am and this is what I want to do. I'm
Yeah.
passionate about helping people, and I want to help people with a brand that is cool, that's provides good looking apparel for people, that doesn't have like a giant 12-step saying on it or whatever. And so and it's just, I even when I was in high school too, it feels like drugs and alcohol really just like, it made me think that I was creative, but I could only like do things in like little pockets of time.
Mm.
Like, and I had to be fucked up to do it, right? Like, whenever I was like not drinking or not partying, it was like, how was I able to be creative? And I thought, in order to be creative, I had to be doing drugs or like drinking, and it was actually the complete opposite, which is crazy, right?
I know what you think in the moment. Like, I can't tell you how many grandiose ideas I had, how many things I said I was going to do, what kind
Yeah.
of person I said I was going to be, like all that, just sitting there drinking, talking, and going in circles. But I think what you said is so relatable, especially to anyone that's listening to this, because I haven't met anybody that doesn't say this exact thing, that like that drinking and using allowed me to also be a chameleon. Like, it made me be able to be who you needed me to be in the moment, to be comfortable. And that was like, and in that you get further away from your true north and your true self,
Yeah. Right. Do you feel like there was a lot of like drinking and using substances in the finance field? Like, do you feel like that was also a part of other people's life? Of like, I mean, you think about Wolf of Wall Street, and it's just like, that's what it was, like.
I went to so my high school, the high school that I went to there's a lot of partying, a lot of money. I moved from Hawaii to Texas when I was like transitioning into middle school, and I ended up in like a really wealthy school district. I'm middle
Mm,
class, middle upper class, but really
yeah.
wealthy, like so much money. And here I am in my flip flops, like coming straight up, from Hawaii, and I landed in this place, and I'm like, what is this? And it was just
Huh.
like, there was so much drugs, so much alcohol, so much partying. And then the
Mhm.
college that I went to a really big party school, because I was like, it's just like everywhere
It's what
I
you
go,
do.
it was just a lot. And then transitioning into the career, like, it just was normal until it wasn't normal. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can relate with that as well. I grew up in like South Denver and was in,
Yeah.
like kind of middle class, upper middle
Yeah.
class, and went to like a brand new high school. And it was
Hmm.
like, that's all everyone did there, was just
Yeah.
party, and it was acceptable. And it was crazy what we were able to get away with. And then
Yeah.
and then even
Yeah.
in college too, I went to Colorado State University, and it was
Mhm.
just like, I'm grateful that I was able to get an education and
Yeah.
like still be able to party, and I didn't drop
Hmm.
out. But at the same time, it was like, there were a couple of times where I was like, dude, I need to like get my head in the right place, or
Hmm.
else like I'm gonna, this isn't
Yeah.
gonna be good. And just feel like today culturally, like, it's so acceptable in
Hmm.
high school and in college
Hmm.
to party, which is crazy, because it's like people are dying left and right now. It's like, why would people want to be partying if they know that people are dying, and they're like, oh, maybe this drug doesn't have anything, and it
Right.
does, and it's kind of
Yeah.
terrifying that it's like, it's still the stigma that like it's okay to party, or like
It's like a
it's
rite of passage, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a rite of passage, or like it's just how you fit in societally and like with the cool kids, because that's what the cool kids do, is party. And it's kind of terrifying. And like, that's kind of one of my other thoughts that I really want to do with the last drop, is really show people that like, it's cool, it's okay to be sober. It's like,
Yeah.
you could have just as much fun when you're sober, and you can take care of yourself and be the best version that you can be when you're sober.
I think a lot of people are really scared of what they're like. I was too. I think that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing that holds people back. It's like, my life's going to suck. It's going to be boring. I know that was my story for a while. So I feel very in alignment
Yeah.
with you, and like trying to show people like, it's actually just like, it's going to get better.
Mm.
But Yeah. We have
Like
to keep showing people that. So much better.
a lot better, right? Yeah, and that's so true too. Is it's the boring part. I always was like, my life is gonna suck and be so boring
Yeah.
if I'm not like drinking a bottle every night and doing a bunch of drugs every night. And it was terrifying in the first like year of sobriety because I was like, how am I gonna like live up to this idea of what life was gonna be like now? And it's just crazy how much it changes, you know?
I know.
Sweet. So yeah, the next one, let's see. What events led you, and this might be a tough question. Feel free to dig in as much as you want, but
I know
what
this one.
yeah, like what events led you to drinking and using, you know, trauma? Was it, you know, and to continue drinking and using, right?
Okay, this wasn't the one I thought you were gonna ask me, but this is a really good one. Because you're like, where did it all start? Like, how
Yeah.
did it happen? How did it escalate so fucking quickly? Because
Yes.
it was a while. I mean, it was from the time I was about 14 until I got sober clean when I was 34. And
Yep.
I mean, we were on a whole. There wasn't any breaks. We were going hard the whole time.
Yes.
You know, I think a big thing for me, like, was fitting in when I moved. When I moved, there was a lot of bullying. I was bullied really hard when I moved to my new school district. I felt like so out of place, such an outcast. I was still like super uncomfortable in my own skin, super,
Hmm.
you know. So I found smoking weed and drinking, and I was like, oh, this turns down the noise. This turns down the noise. And then, as a result of that, once you start that, then all of a sudden all the things that you were drinking and using on the first place, you're fitting in because it's the cool thing to do. And so
Yes.
then it's amplified and you're like younger and you're still in the beginning of your thing. So you can still handle your shit, right? You're like, I'm working,
Hmm.
I'm doing good in school and I can party, like this works. And that carried on to college. And I was like, okay, I'm working a full-time, part-time job, making a bunch of cash, in the service industry. I'm still getting my shit done in college. I'm still
Hmm.
partying. Like this is sustainable, right? So it just keeps getting amplified because it gets a little bit more intense.
Hmm.
I think that a big part of it for me, probably one of my downfalls is like definitely that's the not fitting in. And then like relationships are a really tough one for me.
Oh
Losing
yeah.
myself and somebody else in toxic relationships was a really big amplification because some people go to the gym, some people gamble, some people I drink or use when things got tough
Yes.
or when they got good.
Hmm.
So I went through a really, really toxic relationship with a very, very narcissistic person. And it was it was like 8 years of that. I really think
Oh.
that took a toll. I always say like I played an equal part in that, right? And
Mm.
so
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like, but that, and then after that, I think it's like once I started to realize that I knew that I had a problem,
Mhm.
there was so much shame that built up around that caused me to
Mm.
then like go inward and then start using and drinking by myself because that was at that point, you just build up like compounds over time.
Yeah.
And so I think that I think once things started getting really bad, I started to lose the things that did define me, right? I was like, well, at least I can handle my shit. But when I started to not be able to handle my shit, I started to lose friends. I started to cause problems in my family. I started to lose, my jobs. I was like,
Mm.
that just
Mhm.
that's really probably like the biggest things for me, I would say, leading
Mm.
up to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like, you know, with a lot of other people who are sober or have had problems with alcohol and drugs, it's the relationships too, are just, it's like, for me, it was a lot of codependency and a
Mhm.
lot of like, yeah, the minute anything was good or bad, like I'd be like, well, there's another excuse to party, you know? And
Yeah.
for me, it was always like the end of relationships too, because I was so codependent with women where it was like the minute something went bad or the minute that it started to fall apart, I was like, I have to drink because I don't know how to handle myself
Yeah.
by myself. And like,
Yeah.
I needed that other person to, you know, put all of my bullshit on. And like, you know, I couldn't sit with myself. I couldn't be with myself because I was so uncomfortable with myself, you know? And, I mean, it's just one of those crazy realities to where I feel like a lot of us addicts and alcoholics are like, we have relationship problems and we have codependency problems. And like, do you feel like now that you're sober, you can handle relationships better, whether it's like, you know, work relationships or like personal loving relationships? Do you feel like they're better now?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yes, me too. Me too.
I agree so much with you on like that, there's so many layers to that, right? The not wanting to look at the things that are wrong with you, the projecting it onto somebody else, the codependency, the needing validation, like all of the things, right? And
Yes.
then just the
Yes.
unhealthy and the trauma bonding, and when you're using with someone, there's all the things that happen. But
Yes.
when I got sober, I had been in a relationship like my entire life up until that point. I'd never been single.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yes.
it wasn't like, they always say like, don't date anyone for the first year. Like it was a choice. I've stayed out of a relationship and not 100% by choice, but I've gotten so comfortable being alone with myself, like
Yeah.
getting to know myself.
That's awesome.
But so it was like for 4 years of my recovery journey, I have been single and it's been glorious.
That's
Um,
awesome. Yeah.
and it's like, who would have thought if I looked at like the older version of me, like that similar to you, couldn't even be alone by themselves and sit with their own feelings. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the greatest things is that I have learned to, even though they're fucking uncomfortable and I cry a lot, like,
Yes. I feel that. Yeah.
and I cry all the time and I want to stomp my feet. Like, I think that time has now, allowed me to, have like the good quality. And I don't have a ton of relationships, but the ones that I do have are solid
Yeah.
and they've allowed me to be present and um actually like it's just been a whole experience. So yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, how did using affect your career up until the point that you got sober?
Okay, so same thing. It was I could manage it until I couldn't, right? I was making a ton of money in the beginning of my career because that was where I landed. I was 22 years old making tons of money. So I was partying, going out, all the things, but everything was still manageable.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until, I knew I had a problem. I knew I had a problem. It was the morning that I took a shot in the morning and I was like, oh, normal
Oh,
people don't do this. They don't do it.
yeah.
And I was like, and I just remember that day and I was like, oh, that's like, I've never done that before. But right
Mm.
after a really toxic relationship, I moved to New York City and I thought that running away from this toxic relationship and like completely changing my life and like moving to New York was going to be the answer for me. And it was
Yeah.
completely the opposite. I went into like a horrible state with my mental health. It was just, I
Mm.
was in a position where I was um, in this giant city with all of these like emotional issues, just with alcohol and drugs everywhere.
Yeah.
And
Oh
so it
yeah.
was in New York City that like I remember I got like it started to cause a problem. I'd call out of work, I'd make excuses, and it did lose. I ended up quitting my job before they could fire me. But then like after that, like that was the initial downfall of
Mm.
everything because that's when things just got. Because once you do that once, it's just then the next thing's okay, and the next thing's okay, and you just go to harder things, and so
Yes.
after that point, it was just like I would get a job, and I'm a really great, charming interviewer. I've never been turned down for a job,
Yeah.
and I'm an incredible employee. But when I'm using or I'm drinking, I might last a few months, and then I'm back to my old ways and trying to make
Mm-hmm.
excuses. And it was just like after that, it was just downfall after downfall after downfall after downfall.
Mm. Would you say that was your last drop moment? Was like, what was that the reason why you decided to get sober? Was like, I just took a shot in the morning, and then the next thing you know, you're like, I'm taking 3 shots in the morning. You know?
No, that was about 7 years later from that moment that I
Oh
actually
my.
got sick. So there was a lot more that happened in between that.
So what was your last drop moment? What was your bottom?
So at the time, I had been unemployed for 2 years, like maybe a year and a half. I had done all the things that I said I'd never do. Right. So not only am I, alcohol is my main vice, also heroin and meth. And so at
Mm.
that point,
Yep.
I'm using IV drug use, which is something I never would have thought that would have happened, but it escalated to that point. And I couldn't like despite everything in my life that was falling apart, like I couldn't get clean or sober. I
Yeah.
just like couldn't get out of that cycle. I knew like I knew I had to do something different because like I wasn't going to go on much longer like this, but
Mm.
the catalyst for my last drop moment, I got in a car accident where I totaled my car. I woke up in jail. I had no idea how I got there. I was facing 3 felonies.
Oh.
And I got out of jail and I went and I used and I drank. And I was like I am so like, I'm going to die or I'm going to prison, because I was facing prison. And
Okay.
it wasn't like, it was maybe a month after that I continued to use and drink, and I had been to treatment before. So like, not everyone was like, here, we'll help you go to treatment. I had to like figure that stuff out through like the state and like get funding and stuff, while
Oh,
I was in active
okay.
addiction. And just, it happened to work out where I was able to go somewhere. And it was like all of that. I was like, I gotta try this one more time. And I'd failed so many times previously. So I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't know.
Mm.
But like,
Mhm.
that was kind of the last drop moment that leading up to that.
Ooh, that's brutal. And I can totally relate on so many levels to that. Yeah, kind of, yeah, same with me. It was like, I remember I went to jail, and then the next day when I got out, I literally like hit up my dealer the first like, 20 minutes out of jail, and I was like,
Yep.
yo, I'm on my way. And it was like,
Crazy.
and there was a lot of yeah, it was just like I didn't know how to get clean. I didn't know how to get sober, And so did treatment help you that time get sober, or did you like did something click to where it was like, okay, this is what I have to do, and then you start on your
Yeah.
journey, or what? How did that happen?
So I had been to treatment 3 times before. Same thing. I'd get out and I'd use like within 48 hours. The longest I think I'd ever made it was, I have so many 30-day chips. It's ridiculous. But it's like the
Totally.
longest that it's like I can decorate a Christmas tree. So that wasn't like, at that point in my life, I wasn't confident that that was all I was going to do. So how I got sober so it's a combination, because I truly believe like all of these things played a factor in it. It just happened to be like what happened for me, and it worked for me. I think it was just because it was such a drastically different thing. So my sister is also in recovery. She just celebrated 10 years. I actually took her to
Nice.
her first AA meeting.
That's
And
awesome.
when we were in active addiction together, and she ended up staying and I ended up going back out. But so she had done ayahuasca. So she had
Okay.
done plant medicine, and she was like, I think this could help you. I was like, I don't know if I should be like going and like drinking some type of like,
Some
hallucinogenic tea
plant.
in the middle of like the rainforest, when like, I don't know, that might set me even further off. But
Yeah.
I had done some research on it, and I was like, I'm open to it. And one of the requirements to do it is you can't have anything in your system, right? You can't have any like drugs, alcohol, medication, whatever. So
Mm.
if I got sober, then I could do this kind of thing. But the first thing was getting
Wow.
to where I went. So
Okay.
I went to treatment. 30 days. I got out. I ended up getting on a plane and going to do an ayahuasca ceremony.
Wow.
Um, it was extremely effective for me in rewiring like certain. It was
Pathways.
very, very, very helpful for my situation. Something
Wow.
clicked there in that moment for me that was like, something clicked. It worked in a way that I felt like I processed so much trauma and stuff in that situation. And then once I got out, I went back to where I was, I was living in a town, like a small town in Texas called Abilene. And I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm going to get this right, then I can't go back to Austin. Like, I can't go back to Austin because I'm just going to go back to like the same shit I did. So I made a commitment. I got back from Brazil, which is where I went. I moved into sober living for a year. I went to AA meetings or NA and AA meetings for a year. I worked with a sponsor.
Mm.
Like, I did those things. And then after
Nice.
that, yeah. So it was kind of like that. And then it was working on my mental health and really just like taking time to focus on my health, which I think was a huge catalyst as well. So it's a bunch of different things.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That is so amazing. So when you got back from Brazil and you got back into Texas, was it just like a clean cut, like, dude, I have to switch everything? Like, obviously, yeah, I can't go back to Austin because just can't be there, right? And was it just like 2 feet planted at that point? Like, this is how I'm going to live. And then you made the decision to just stay sober and try this
Yeah.
lifestyle?
It was a huge turning point, but I was also really resistant to all of the things like that you said that people suggested that I did in the past. Like, I didn't
Oh,
want to go
yeah.
to meetings. I didn't want to do the steps. I didn't want to like I didn't want to do outpatient. I didn't want to do all those things. I didn't want to live in it sober living. I didn't want to do any of that. And I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
instead of me trying to like do it my way, why don't I just surrender for a year? And
Mm,
like if I made a contingency with myself, if I can get this right for a year, then I will have earned the right to go back and like live my life in Austin. Not really earned, but like I felt like that was a promise that I knew that like I could. I was also really wanting to like turn around some of the things that I did. So it's almost like I didn't view it as a punishment. I did it as like get really excited because like if you can get a year of recovery, like holy fuck, you've barely ever
hmm.
gotten like 90 days. Like this would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
huge. And so I started on this path. Like I moved into sober living. I was like, oh God. I started going to meetings and I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
But I did the things to like move my life forward. And then what happened is as a result of me doing these things, like I just got so like everything just started conspiring in a good way in my life from a career standpoint, from just the support, like God, universe, whatever you want to call it, like moved in a direction and things just started like it was like a ripple effect, like positivity, all these things. All my charges got dropped for my legal stuff. Like it was just all of this stuff. I
Oh
got
my
an
God.
amazing career opportunity. And I was like, this is why I'm supposed to do these things. So it was,
Mhm.
it just all fell into place.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And like, so when you decided like, hey, I need to surrender, do you feel like that was like the best thing you could have done for yourself? Is like, hey, let me just give this a try and like let me just let go and just see what happens. Do you feel like that was the best thing for you to do?
I know you're going to think this sounds crazy, but as a result of like, I mean, I always like when I got sober would have like an insatiable desire to still drink and use. Like it would be
Oh
really
yeah.
hard for me. I mean, like literally driving by a liquor store, like, I mean, just like a primal need to use and drink. That was so hard. And when
Totally.
I did a couple things, in the beginning, right? So it was the ayahuasca. I healed my gut. I got off all my pharmaceutical medication. I took a more holistic path. So I started like changing my eating habits, working
Mm,
out. And as I don't know what it was about all of those things together. Like I didn't have the craving that I had anymore. Like it was so
that's
wild.
awesome.
And I know that that's not like everyone doesn't experience that, but it made it like I started to get some wins and like the way that I felt because I'm sure
Yeah.
you can relate. Like I thought my health was so fucked. I thought I had done so much damage to my body,
Yes.
so much like I was just totally screwed. And I started to see like myself bouncing back from these things like really quickly. And I was like, and so I went down like a really big path of healing. And I think that that was also like a part of it. So it was like
Important.
it was surrender, but it was
Mm,
also like doing things differently than I did
damn.
and doing it the way that like I almost kind of like just leaned into myself and started to like take my own advice a little more as well when it comes to like my health and stuff. So
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
winded.
No, no, that's great. That's awesome. So after you got sober, how did that affect your career? You were saying that you kind of got like a better career opportunity. That like, what was that?
Yeah, so I started off super humble. I was like I could go back to sales. So in the process, like a lot of things happened, but I I was like, okay, I can go back into what I know, or I can just do something that's more in alignment to my goals. So I started
Mm,
working at an Orange Theory Fitness, doing
cool.
their sales. And I was like, but at least I get a free gym membership and I can like go work out, right? This is an
Yeah,
alignment to
yeah.
the new Danielle DiGrandi. And as a result of that, I ended up meeting a doctor who's a functional doctor who uh, he was just had a good. We just like riffed. We got along really well. I really liked the way he thought about medicine. I liked the way that he thought about mental health. I loved how he
Mm,
took a more natural approach. He was not just so pharmaceutical driven. I was like, this is so inspiring because that was my journey, right? I didn't want to be on pharmaceuticals through my mental.
oh yeah.
It was in alignment, and I was like, okay. So I was this part of me was like so eager. So I was like, can I have a job? Are you hiring? Like, I'll do anything you want. He ended up hiring me. I ended up working under him for 2 years, and I just got to learn all of this stuff about functional health, and it was just like so in alignment to the like it just happened. And so I took that career path, and then working under him, I was obviously, I loved that job, but I was super grateful for it, but I didn't want to be in Abilene for as long as I was. It's a small town in West Texas.
For sure.
I wanted to go back to Austin. And so I branched out on my own. I had a side hustle. I had a business where I was doing coaching and helping people with their mental wellness and their gut health. I had made a little bit of income from that. Not enough to replace my income, but I had to fly and trust myself. And so I left that job, and then I built my business from that. And that's what I do full time now. So it kind of just all worked out.
Yeah.
It's been really hard.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so as like you were in Orange Theory, basically when you were coming up with Sober Rebels, was it just like, do you feel like, well, obviously, you know, was your sobriety really helping play into both of those things? Like you were kicking ass at Orange Theory, and then you were like starting to kind of dig into Sober Rebels a little bit more. And then do you feel like,
yeah, go ahead.
oh yeah, no, go for it.
No, do I feel like what? I didn't catch that last part.
Oh yeah. So do you feel like, like your sobriety was essential to help you, do the things that you were doing at that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sobriety was essential because the Orange Theory, that part was my big, like, when you're at that part in your sobriety where you're just like, I mean, I was up at like 4 a.m, like, just, I'm so eager to I was like, I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Totally. But I think that my sobriety and my health, like I was really thriving in the beginning of my sobriety because some of the things that I did. And I think that like I would have not, the old me wouldn't have been like, had the confidence to ask for what I wanted with this other job, or put myself out there, or realize that like, hey, I just got sober and like I'm making $9 an hour at Orange Theory, but like, even though I just got sober, like I'm a badass and I can prove myself. And so it's like, I was like, I'm not doing this. So I remember like, I was like, who do I think I am? And I was like, no, fuck this. I'm going to go for it. And so it's like, I had the confidence to like approach this doctor and be like, I'm the person to work for you. Like, we're going to create a role for me. And he was like, all right, cool. Like, I just had that. So I think that was a huge thing. Like, I would never have been able to do that sober, and like be able to put in the, like to be able to add value to his practice and be able to like, create stuff and really bring like innovative ideas. I was able to like sharpen my iron again.
There you go.
And ask for things, like ask for like, can you do this? So it's just, I think that's the biggest thing is like the self-advocacy. And just remembering like, I am still a fucking badass. I just lost my way for a little bit. So Sober Rebels was born, it was probably like maybe a year or two into my sobriety.
Okay.
Because I felt like there's this huge part of me that wants to bring I truly believe that if you've gone through adversity and you face all this shit, like the biggest waste of everything is like if it was for nothing and you don't do something with it.
Totally.
And so I was like, how can I take the work that I'm doing with like the movement that's happening with like, and collaborate and just bring that all together for people that are wanting to level the fuck up in their recovery journey. And I was like, here it is. I'm going to create it. And like, we're going to go from here. So it's kind of like been a work in progress.
That's awesome. That's super awesome for sure. So do you think maintaining your sobriety is like super important for what you're doing today? Because so Sober Rebels is like what you do full time now, correct?
So what I do full time is my mental wellness and gut health business. Okay, Sober Rebels is the community. Got it. My business is my mental wellness and gut health business. But this is my passion project. But they play in together because most of the people that I work with in sobriety need support with their gut health and mental wellness. So it's all like it's like not everyone has to work with me. I want to create a safe place for people regardless, but they intertwine.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. It's like kind of to answer my own question. Like I think it's so essential today. Like I look at the work that I'm doing today and I'm like, dude, if I would be on anything, whether it was a little or a lot, like it would be impossible for me to be doing
Oh
the
yeah.
amount of output that I'm doing today compared to like, when I was drinking and using, like, I thought a busy day was like 7 hours long. I was like, oh my God, I did so much work today. And I was like, dude, you don't even fucking know, And it's just
I
so,
don't want to do shit. I don't want to do anything when I'm hungover. I'm just not a good version of myself. So I couldn't imagine, like, I think once you get a taste of how, at least in my experience, I've had a very like optimal sobriety because like I've just had a very good, healthy sobriety. In the past I hadn't. In the past I'd given up alcohol and booze. It felt horrible. But just the shifts that I made early on, like I'm just like, how the fuck did I operate? Like, how did
yeah,
I know how I operated. I smoked cigarettes. I drank coffee. I went to work. I counted on the hours until I could drink again. Sometimes I drink during, just like,
yeah.
it's just different now.
So yeah, so different. So yeah, so what advice do you have for business owners, entrepreneurs, or just anyone else listening to this podcast that are struggling with addiction or mental health or substance use disorder? Like, what advice do you have for them if they're looking to get help or they're just struggling?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many ways I could answer this question. I truly believe, like, for me, one of the biggest things that helped is like I realized how much power I did have in my choices in my sobriety journey. There's a lot of different like ways you could go that people will give you advice or they'll tell you to do this, or if you don't do it this way, then you're not doing it right, and fucking blah da 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 da. I think it's like trusting yourself, but also just do something instead of nothing, right? Like try
Mhm.
things out. Um, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and it's twofold, right? Because entrepreneurship can go one way, where a big part of your entrepreneurship journey is like getting out and like networking, and that comes with its own set of drinking and like as a way to connect falsely anyway, which is
Yeah,
crazy. You know what I'm talking about? Or it can be
totally.
very inward. It can be very inward and isolating, right? Like
Mhm.
entrepreneurship is extremely isolating. And so
Yes.
it's like, how can you find some type of community, whether that's online, in person, AA, like just like anything to help you feel not so alone in this.
Mhm.
And then from a standpoint of uh, like just for personal self, right? It's like trying to find some type of way to, um, how do I want to say this? Like prioritize yourself, create some type of like routine or some type of thing to keep you accountable. It's just so hard when you're drinking or using, right? So it's like, I think the
Mhm.
first step is just finding a support system in a community.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, what's the next step for Sober Rebels in that community? Are you going to be growing it? Are you scaling right now?
We are scaling. We are scaling. We have a chapter in Texas. It's going to be all global domination.
Hell yeah,
Yeah.
bring it
So
on.
one of the things as we build out this community is moving into more like ways that we can support people that are wanting to take things to the next level. And then in the future, similar to you, there'll be some point where you can get Sober Rebel gear, but my next step
Oh
is going to
yeah,
be in person events, really like
that's
getting people.
awesome.
I do believe that like the internet is awesome, but there's nothing like human connection. And that's something that even for myself, like as an entrepreneur, I miss sometimes, So
Oh yeah,
how can I create it? There are so many cool people and movements. It's like, how can we come together and collaborate more to just show people, as similar to what you said, like this life it doesn't suck. It's
yeah.
actually a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's a
So
lot of fun, right? A lot of fun. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Do you collaborate with like the Phoenix, or do you like try to stay in your own pocket, or like how do you grow, or how do you find
yeah,
more community?
I think that like this has been a process of just like learning and growing. And I truly believe, especially in this day and age, there's so much power in collaboration for everyone involved, right?
Yeah,
So that is definitely like, I mean, this is my baby. I love this, but it's not about me. This isn't about me. Like I'm
totally.
separate to this. It's about the movement of like, are you a sober rebel? Does that hit home with you?
That's
Does that
tight.
resonate with you? And if
Yeah,
that
that's
resonates with
awesome.
you, like, come on, like, let's go. So I really like one of the things is like, I just feel like we're so much better off when we come together.
Oh yeah.
And so I want to band together to make it less about myself and my business partner and more about elevating people in the community and then partnerships as well.
That's awesome. Do you have any sort of like, do you have anything to help people trying to get sober on your website? Do you have any resources for if people are interested to, yeah, and if someone's listening to this and like, oh, I want to learn more about Sober Rebel, how can they find you?
Yeah, so in the community where we provide a ton, we bring outside people in. I myself and my business partner do a lot of like value add and coaching in there for free. So it's a free resource for you to come like learn more about it. Our Facebook group is where we're at right now. So
Cool.
that's the main hub. So you can go to Sober Rebels, and that would be the first step is come on in. Yeah. Stay a
That's
while,
cool.
see if it's the right fit for you. And then we'll move to other things. It's not going
That's
anywhere.
awesome.
It's only gonna keep
Only
growing.
the beginning. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Right on. Yeah, like, and it would be cool. I was just thinking because I was talking to someone the other day about this too. I'd be so happy to collaborate with you, do like a last drop Sober Rebels T-shirt, and like,
Yes.
no, I think that'd be super rad for sure.
Have you seen our logo? I'll have to show it to you. I mean, I created a logo.
Okay.
It's a lightning bolt. I'll show it to you. I don't have one.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I did see it. I think I went. Was it on your link tree?
Yeah, it should be on my link tree. Yeah,
I think I saw it. Yeah.
The thing about sobriety is, and why like I like to follow other people, like to support this community, is because like I don't know, my story might not resonate like with people, but something you said might. You know what I mean? So it's like the different way. It's, you don't have to sit in a 12-step meeting to like hear, like people say you can do it online, but I don't know. I love like, and then when I hear other people's stories, I find like, even to this day, I'm like, I feel like even some of the things you said, I'm like, fuck, I feel less alone. Like knowing that you were like that too. It's like, it gives us that connection. So I just think the more, stories and resources and like people that people have to like choose from and listen to, the better.
Yeah, totally.
I would love to collab.
That would be so awesome if we collaborated on a shirt or a hat or a hoodie or whatever, and I think that'd be super sick for sure. And it is
all the things. You're ahead of me in this.
I got you. We could send me over a design, send me over your logo, and we could whip something up cool. But that's another reason like why I wanted to get you on here is because I think a lot of people think that the only way that, they can have community in sobriety is with a 12-step fellowship. And it's totally not the case. Like, I definitely participate in 12-step myself. And like, that's where I find some freedom with what I'm, dealing with. And, and it's just, but it's also, it's not for everyone, and people need to know that like, there's a lot of people out there that are super down with 12-step, and it's like, it's not the only way. Like, it's a good place to start if you want to check to see like what that's about, but also there's other ways to do it. So it's like alternate recovery, right? Of like,
so true.
And it's so important because we don't only need 12-step programs, like, because just like I was saying, it's some people it doesn't click, like, and they just are like, I don't want to go to a fucking meeting, like, and they maybe something else will work for them that's an alternative program. And I think it's so important to have those things. So but thank you so much for jumping on the show today. Is there anything else that you would say to people listening? Is there anything you want to close out with?
I just want to second what you said, because you have to be really like, use discernment when taking advice from other people on the internet, like 100%. But I just wish more people understood that, like, similar to what you said, I chose 12-step meetings because I just needed a place to go that wasn't drinking. I just needed, and like, I found people there, and then I outgrew that. And like, but I still like, I'll still dip in sometimes to them. It's just like, I didn't outgrow it. Let me say, it transitioned to different things. I really want, if you're listening and you're like, oh my God, like, first of all, the word sober doesn't even resonate. I don't even know, like, you're just trying to find your way in this whole thing. It's use discernment with who you take advice from, and trust yourself, even though like maybe you've broken some promises to yourself or your track record's not good. Like, lean into yourself and really like try some things out so you can figure out what works for you, because there is no right or wrong way to do this. And it takes a lot of like, you got to discover more about who you are and who you be and all those things. So yeah, just it doesn't have to be black or white.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. And thank you,
Thank you.
everyone, for listening. If you've tuned into this podcast today, thanks again for tuning into the last drop. Be sure to check out Danielle DiGrandi on Instagram. She is at the Danielle DiGrandi. And yeah, thanks again for jumping on. I really appreciate it. And be sure to share. Check out thelastdrop.com. Check out Sober Rebels. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and have a beautiful, blessed day.